It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
But I want to read a quote to you. Because we now know that a lot of the media have been on the take. A lot of the media have been feeding at the public trough. We've been subsidizing the media through our government. Politico, some of the others. It's really disgusting. It's shocking. They should close shop, those that were caught anyway. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, let me repeat. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it. A legal system that authorizes it. And a moral code that glorifies it. Is that not the most brilliant one sentence you've ever heard? Let me repeat it and then I'll tell you the source. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. That's what you're watching today, right now in Washington, D.C. Everybody who's feeding from the public trough, but particularly the power brokers in Washington, the Democrat Party, the unions for the bureaucrats, the media, that really is a subsidy of the federal government in so many ways. What would they be reporting if there wasn't a massive federal government anyway? These people have created for themselves a legal system. You see these judges, I'm getting into this, that authorizes it. They claim that the Constitution compels corruption. The Constitution compels graft. The Constitution compels stealing your tax dollars and subsidizing people who hate you, subsidizing perversion, subsidizing in other countries, that somehow it is constitutionally compelled. And if you challenge it, if you even want to conduct audits to investigate it, that somehow you're the one destroying the United States Constitution. If you want to get spending under control and the bureaucracy under control, you're destroying the United States Constitution. You're a threat to humanity. Again, you're a threat to democracy. We heard it all weekend long. Those of us who are fools enough to listen to it, and count me out, I was not. I'm just reading the transcripts from what I saw today. So now the Constitution of the United States compels governmental graft, governmental waste and abuse, governmental crookedness, the redistribution of wealth, a massive welfare state, not just in our country, but international. Somehow, somewhere, that's what the framers intended. Where? It's nowhere. But you have loathsome, low-life senators like this Chris Murphy from Connecticut. You've got hosts who are the most grotesquely stupid, ideologically buffoonish individuals, period, let alone to be on a public platform, like that clown from Meet the Press, whatever the hell her name is. I'll get to it. We got a lot to do. I've got 3 guests tonight, and they're all great. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. So now if you stand up against plunder, unconstitutional plunder, and the head of the executive branch, the president, says, I got to get my branch of government under control. I want to put in a temporary freeze so I can see what's going on. I want to conduct an audit of the books over at the Treasury Department. I want to offer these enormous numbers of federal bureaucrats an opportunity to accept severance pay. I want to take steps to control the government, to get rid of U.S. aid and all the corrupt money the Democrats have flowed through it to its causes and its friends and all the rest of it. We're now told by one federal judge after another that this may violate the Constitution or some statute. They've created a legal system in their own minds, but they've created a legal system to protect plunder. That is the plundering of you. And let me tell you something, and your children and your grandchildren. We have a $36.5 trillion on-budget debt. We have a $300 trillion off-budget debt. And so you have a man who has the guts as president of the United States, first of all, to become president again, what he went through. The same lawfare in our legal system, but now with activist Democrat judges and activist rhino judges participating in the plunder, participating in the grotesque abuse of you, the American people. You're not allowed to cut one damn penny, even if it means money that goes for transgender education in Cambodia. It doesn't matter. Not one damn penny. And now the Democrats are saying we're going to shut down the federal government if they attempt to cut these budgets. They're actually saying two things. I actually have one guy, this new senator from New Jersey, who looks like he's dumb as hell, sounds like he's dumb as hell. Well, I may have to vote to shut down the government. Then on the other side, you have other Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker saying, oh, the Republicans want to shut down the government. So their strategy is to shut down the government. They're finally going to blame Trump and the Republicans for their violations of the Constitution. They're also out there saying that the Republicans are trying to destroy Social Security. They've had a hell of a weekend. A hell of a weekend.
Mark Levin.
Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
I'd like you to set your DVRs, your smart TVs, or whatever you use to record television to Life, Liberty, and Levin, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'd like you to lock those in on your TVs, your DVRs. Why? Because the next series of programs are going to be essential to supporting what President Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do to save this republic. And save this republic they may. They may. So please go ahead and set your DVRs. Many of you are in your cars. You know, call your spouse, or if you don't have a spouse, make a mental note. Many of you are at home, maybe preparing dinner or something like that. Please go ahead. Go ahead and set it. Set your DVRs or whatever you use, your smart TVs, your recording devices, so you don't have to give it a second thought. And that way, when the weekend comes, if you forget about it, you turn it right on. That is 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday and Sunday, Life, Liberty, and Levin on Fox. I encourage you to do this. I'm going to spend a lot of time digging in on this stuff. And as you know, Life, Liberty, and Levin is certainly one of the smartest shows on TV, not because of me, because of you. Because I'm not going to dumb down things for my audience. I'm not going to bring pro wrestlers in and this in, and I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm not going to have a conga line of guests, only the best guests. And, of course, the opening statement will be written by me, not by others, not by editors, not by ghostwriters. Not that they are. I'm just saying in my case, they never are. And so I'm going to use my decades of experience, my years in the Reagan administration, my years studying the Constitution and the courts, which we have to deal with, writing about the bureaucracy, spending, writing about Marxism, writing about all these things, talking about them with you for all these decades. We're here for a reason, you and I. We're alive for a reason, you and I. And this is our time. This is our day. This is what we live for. And the time has arrived. It's here. You're staring right at it. Good versus evil. Socialism versus capitalism. Marxism versus constitutionalism. It's all happening right now in front of your eyes. And you made this possible because you elected Donald Trump. And without Donald Trump, this wouldn't be going on. That's how fundamental this is. And this is it. This is our battle. This determines whether our children and our grandchildren in this nation survives and they live in freedom and prosperity or not. What Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their team are doing, they're peeling the varnish, the thick 100 years of varnish off of what the so-called progressives, the Marxists, have been doing to our country, to our culture, to our economy, and the enshrined corruption and deceit and graft that they've chiseled into the bureaucracy, which is why they're so desperately out there right now, in unison, using their same propaganda. These demagogues, foul-mouthed, urging people to take to the streets. This is their edifice. It's not ours. This is their edifice. They build it. They own it. You fund it. And this edifice exists to advance their power, to advance their causes. Not for the betterment of the American people, not for the betterment of our country. And they're defending it right now. They're exposing themselves. They're making it obvious to any citizen of this country who wants to watch, regardless of party, regardless of background. Anybody with two brain cells to rub together, they see, you see, the Democrat Party, the Democrat leaders, the media, academia, the government unions, the people on the take, that is, the people on the dole, the people who get federal grants, they're all in unison. They're trying to defend what they've created for themselves. You pay for this. They're stealing from you to put money in their own pockets, to put money behind their own politics, to put money behind their own surrogates, to put money behind their own ideology. This isn't what the Constitution created. What you're seeing is the exposure of this Democrat left-wing power structure and cultural control that are now under assault by a brave man, a courageous president who came to this not out of a philosophical background, not out of the conservative movement or any movement. A patriotic American who loves his country, who loves his fellow countrymen, who knows he's benefited massively from freedom in this country and capitalism, sees it's under attack, puts everything on the line, his business, his health, his welfare, his life. Nobody else has done this. Nobody. Nobody. His critics, these Lilliputians, these punks, they've achieved nothing. They're know-nothings. They don't put anything on the line. They're takers. And they demand more from you. From you. The left-wing power structure and cultural control that has been preached for over 100 years by intellectuals and communists and scholars about how you take over the bureaucracy, how you create this unelected massive government, how you make it so big, so overwhelming, that it is literally impossible to manage it because it manages you. How to use unelected judges, as Woodrow Wilson talked about, one of the early Marxists, dressed up as a progressive. Change, he says, will come from the courts. So they're using right now the unelected branches of the government. One that doesn't even exist legitimately under the Constitution, a fourth branch, this massive bureaucracy that writes almost all the laws and regulations. And the courts, the activist, progressive, leftist judges, that Democrat presidents has spent 100 years creating and populating in our courts. The unelected judiciary, judicial tyranny, the unelected bureaucracy, an army of bureaucrats, their unions, their media. They're trying to build a wall now, a wall around what they've created to protect it. They're issuing judicial orders, unconstitutional orders, in my view, in most respects. Trying to sabotage even the uncovering of what's being done to you. You should be more than happy. You should be ecstatic that Donald Trump is in there, that Elon Musk is assisting him, and that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of others trying to get to the bottom of this and making it available to you like never before in modern history. We are learning more about the rot, the dark underside of the federal government than we've ever known. We knew a lot. We never knew this. And as the Democrats run to the microphones and say they're attacking Social Security, they're attacking this. No, ladies and gentlemen, that can't work again. $50 to $100 billion a year being stolen out of the Social Security system to help subsidize, in many regards, the Democrat Party power structure, illegal aliens. The entire project is now naked for all of us to see. And you have judges who are trying to stop it at the Treasury Department and trying to stop it elsewhere. Judges appointed by Obama, judges appointed by Biden, judges appointed by Clinton. One judge, a senior status judge in Washington, D.C., who hates Trump. Another judge in Seattle. All of them. As the Democrats, as the Democrat power structure, whether it's their state attorneys general, whether it's their well-paid, subsidized front groups bringing these cases, cherry-picking the cities, cherry-picking the districts, desperately trying to get the right judges, and for the most part they are, to try and put an end to this, to try and stop it before you learn too much, before it catches on like a wildfire, where the people are saying, give us our damn government back. Give us our Constitution back. Give us our money back that you're stealing from us. What you see taking place is truly revolutionary, and I mean this. What Donald Trump is doing is revolutionary. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I'm a little concerned as just a viewer, just like you. No inside information. I watched him today. I listened to him yesterday on our show. He seems a little tired to me. Does he to you, Mr. Producer? I've never seen anything like this in 3 weeks. The man's been president for 3 weeks. The trajectory of economic socialism, the trajectory of cultural Marxism, the trajectory of political centralism, all of which are aimed at destroying all the barriers in the Constitution to prevent exactly what you see that Donald Trump is exposing. The ruling class in Washington, D.C., let me explain it again. This is not about populism. This is not about the middle class versus the elite. Last time I checked, Elon Musk is not in the middle class. It's sophomoric to make these arguments. It is about the ruling class, the powerful, using the tools of a government that's almost unrecognizable against we the people, regardless of our wealth or lack of wealth, regardless of our genitalia, regardless of our faith and everything else. It is the ruling class versus we the people. And you have a man, President of the United States, who's supposed to go along. He's supposed to make the right noises. He's supposed to make promises that he doesn't keep. Maybe a little trimming of this, a little trimming of that. That's not what's happening. Donald Trump is atop the ruling class looking down. And he's saying, this must not stand. This must not stand. And all the lords and all the nobles, that is the Democrat members of Congress, the media, their ilk, all the lords and all the nobles of the ruling class, they expect a king, but they didn't get a king. They got a patriot who's now atop the ruling class and trying to dismantle and expose what they're doing to the people of the country. To the people of the country. So the Democrats rely on a phalanx of unelected judges, hysterical propaganda, media sycophants and surrogates to build this wall as fast as they can around their project that's being threatened, their project that took them 80 to 100 years to build, their project, which is anti-American, which is unconstitutional, their project. Now you know why they wanted to keep Donald Trump out of office and put him in prison. What you've learned, and it's very upsetting, that the most corrupt and dishonest entity in America is the federal government. Not every federal employee, not every politician, but enough of them. The most corrupt and dishonest entity in America is the federal government.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
You'll notice, those of you in the audience here, that things we discuss 24, 48, 72 hours early, or that I've written in my books and I've shared with you, are talked about soon thereafter. Soon thereafter. Activist judges, separation of powers, things that politicians and talk show hosts and cable news types don't normally dabble in. It's not something they typically understand. This is why I discuss these things with you. We're the point of the spear. This is why I post the things that I post on social media, because it's picked up and it's read. That's why it's important that you are the beacon of lights. You're the beacons. So we can keep pressing ahead with this agenda as we fight the radical left and the ruling class, we the people. Now, I was at Reagan National Airport this morning. Got up ultra early in the morning, my wife and I. She took me to the airport. Everything went very, very smoothly. Kept checking. I didn't trust the airlines, just in case American Airlines. Kept checking. The snow was not a problem. The ice was not a problem. The plane coming in from Boston, American Airlines plane, landed on time, was at our gate. The people working the gate, two very lovely people, I might add, a gentleman and a young lady, they were about to get us into our groups, you know, this group, that group 1 through 4 over here, 5 through 9 over there. And as we were getting in line, all of a sudden on the big screen, canceled. Now, the plane was at the gate. The pilots were in the plane. The crew was in the plane. Canceled. Now, I've had planes canceled before. Never while we're getting ready to get on the plane that's right in front of our two eyes. This is American Airlines at Reagan National. We were headed to Florida. We had some interviews to do. And then, of course, everybody's lining up at customer service looking for a way out. The only flight that my wife could help me find was one that would take us through Orlando, and the damn thing would be 6.5 hours. I said, I'm not doing that. So I went home. And I was supposed to fly out tomorrow morning. But I want the top executives at American Airlines to understand something. Not the worker bees who just do what they're told and do the very best they can. And in this case, these agents were very concerned and upset. I could see it on their face, like, what the hell just happened? They had no idea. It just flashed on the board and they had to execute policy. When you take a plane and you give it to other customers, because that, I'm sure, is what the hell you did. and inconvenience all the other people who've come from God knows where, woke up at some crazy hour in the morning, and they're there at the gate, processed through your system, processed through TSA. And there's nothing wrong with the plane, and there's nothing wrong with the weather. But you make some jackass decision, some jerk in some dark room with a schedule. Nobody knows who it is, or if there's a committee of them. And show that kind of disrespect and inconvenience all those passengers, or would-be passengers. It is pathetic. It is outrageous. And I'm talking to you, American Airlines. Normally, I don't do this. But I have never been in a situation where we're literally lining up to get on the plane and cancel pops up on the monitor without any warning whatsoever. It's one thing to do it an hour before so people can hustle and find another flight or contact their family members or whatever. But to do it this way is pathetic. And you can believe I'll be looking for other airlines to travel when I can. Part of the problem is the airport that I fly into in Florida, there's limited service. It's typically JetBlue or American Airlines. And there aren't many flights to where I need to go out of Dulles, which is what the airport that I live closest to. Look, they don't have to rearrange things for me. But when I and 150 or God knows how many other people drag our asses and do exactly what they say and show up at that gate with a functioning airplane, with a functioning pilot and co-pilot, with a functioning crew, everything's functioning, and then all of a sudden that pops up on the screen so they obviously can give that plane to somebody else, you better believe I'm pissed off. And it's not just about me. It's about the other people. And it's not just about them. It's about you, too. Again, it's one thing if you have notice. It's one thing if there's a mechanical issue. It's one thing if you have union rules and they're not showing up. God knows what, 1,000 different things. But that's not what happened here. That's not what happened. Airline industry is a tough industry to run. But don't run it into the ground, for God's sakes. You know, I just thought I'd point that out, Mr. Producer. And the inconvenience isn't just the inconvenience of travel. You go to an airport and then you have to leave the airport or what have you. It's everything that flows from that. I don't know all these other people, what their family situations are, what their home situations are, what their health situations are, what their business situations are. They have doctor's appointments scheduled. They're going to see a special surgeon. Maybe they're going to visit a builder. Maybe they have a sick kid. I don't know. It's all that and more. All that and more. There are legitimate reasons to cancel flights. This isn't one of them. And I'm using this massive megaphone to make it abundantly clear. It's one thing to do what you have to do, which inconveniences passenger. It's another thing to show utter and complete contempt and disrespect and inconvenience your would-be passengers. That's a totally different story. That's a totally different thing. And again, even the agents at the desk were stunned. They were good soldiers. They didn't complain out loud, but they looked at each other. I saw their faces like, what the hell just happened here? They had no notice. They had no idea. One of them grabbed the phone and started to make calls. I could hear her. What's the problem? What's the issue? Nobody told us. Exactly. Nobody told them. Now, I've got a lot to discuss here. I posted something on the internet while I was sitting there expecting to get on the plane, tapping it out with my right forefinger and sending it to Mr. Producer to post. And this is what I wrote early this morning for most of you who follow it anyway. The D.C. ruling class versus we, the people, in our Constitution. I've spent decades talking about and writing about the judicial tyranny of left-wing activist judges and the progressive, that is, Marxist project, starting with the likes of then-Professor Woodrow Wilson. Despite all the lies and static about the conservatives on the present Supreme Court, who are actually originalists, doing the job of real jurists, these activists are destroying and intending to destroy the judicial system, using it as a kind of politburo to impose their ideology from the bench. Wilson will be proud. This is what he preached. This is the real constitutional crisis, not POTUS, Musk, and others trying to reestablish separation of powers, representative government, limited central authority, and so forth. The bureaucracy is a fourth branch of government, something I've been writing about and preaching about for decades. That is non-existent in our Constitution. The federal district courts are not found in our Constitution. They're a creation of Congress. Even judicial review can't be found in our Constitution. The case of Marbury versus Madison established it, but that was a case. That's not the Constitution. It's an implied power. Rather than these entities acting with deference and caution, given the fact that they are not in the Constitution, today they're bulldozing their way through the Trump administration, substituting their personal views and preferences for those of an elected president, seeking to sabotage his ability to govern. Then they and their surrogates have the temerity to claim Trump is a threat to a constitutional government, as they usurp it and him. The truth is that Trump is a threat to them, the corrupt, power-hungry ruling class, and their unchecked power over politics and culture. No, Trump is a threat to them. Their century of power grabs and abuses of power, they're autocrats, not Democrats. They seek to lord over us, not serve us. And they use our money and the tools of government for self-aggrandizement. They've been able to keep most of it in the shadows until now. Notice how they're desperately defending it, every inch and penny. The fraud and all of it. No one is saying a president has dictatorial powers, except in essence, those who celebrate Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson and Barack Obama and Joe Biden. They're celebrating dictatorships. They're the closest to modern dictators our nation has ever experienced, all Democrats. Trump complies with federal court decisions. Biden defied the Supreme Court several times, not to mention violated immigration laws and other laws with impunity and with the support of his party and their media. Biden and his party have sought to destroy the independence of the Supreme Court and unleashed a campaign of intimidation and a barrage of threats against justices with whom they disagree. In fact, there's much about the Constitution they hate, including the Bill of Rights, Electoral College, its authors. It's a long list. This president complies with federal court decisions even when he disagrees with certain rulings. He appeals them through the legal process. That said, no judge has the power to run the executive branch, especially when it comes to basic executive functions, such as restructuring agencies, personnel matters like severance, temporary holds on spending to conduct reviews, access to agency information to conduct audits, and so forth. These judges have no power to substitute their personal and political preferences for that of a popularly elected president of the United States. And it's not lost on you and me that Democrats, whether public sector union bosses or state attorneys general, are behind this latest lawfare. They're colluding and conspiring. These cases are brought in Democrat strongholds to cherry-pick favorable judges. The entire edifice Trump is challenging is basically owned by the Democrat Party and paid for by you. They've created their own legal system. They've appointed their own judges to protect it all. It has nothing to do with protecting the Constitution and everything with dismantling it. The power of the unelected branches and their media are creations of the early progressives, that is, Marxists, to perpetuate their power and control even when they lose elections. And that's precisely what's taking place. They tried to stop Trump from becoming president, having failed miserably despite their fascistic legal tactics. They're now trying to sabotage his electoral mandate, all the time waving around the very Constitution that they despise.
Mark Levin.
The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
We're here today because we have filed charges against the state of New York. We have filed charges against Kathy Hochul. We have filed charges against Letitia James and Mark Schroeder, who is with DMV. This is a new DOJ, and we are taking steps to protect Americans, American citizens, and angel moms, like the mom standing right behind me, who you're going to hear from in a moment. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today. As you know, we sued Illinois, and New York didn't listen. So now you're next. Mm-hmm. Millions of illegal aliens with violent records have flooded into our communities, bringing violence and deadly drugs with them.
Fantastic. Bundy is going to be a great attorney general. Great attorney general. And it's about time we prioritize American citizens. In 2023, those law enforcement grants to New York City alone amounted to $1.56 billion, according to the CIS, Center for Immigration Services, writes the New York Post. The DOJ had been expected to fork over more than $8 billion in funding to cities and their agencies in fiscal year 2025. But Bondi ordered her department to not enter into any new contract, grant, or other agreement to provide federal funding to non-governmental organizations that support or provide services, either directly or indirectly, that is, through subcontracting or other arrangements, to removable or illegal aliens. That move comes as Borders Czar Tom Homan ramps up immigration removal proceedings nationwide. So this is the real deal. And finally, they sued Letitia James's big fat you-know-what butt, and Hochul, a permanent Halloween figure. And that's a good thing. Now, I want to talk to you about appropriations. She says we're withholding appropriations. This is a little deep, but I'm going to talk about it now, and so you will hear others in cable, in radio, and so forth and so on mimic this, so stick with me. Illegitimate federal expenditures. You know there can be illegitimate federal expenditures, right? You wouldn't know that if you listen to the Democrats and their surrogates. That refers to unauthorized or improper use of federal funds. Unauthorized or improper use of federal funds. And that includes the failure to comply with relevant statutes, regulations, and contractual terms and conditions. What Elon Musk and Donald Trump are talking about are two sets of spending. Spending that promotes political and cultural agendas for the Democrat Party and the left and the other kooks, and outright waste, fraud, and abuse. These are not legitimate federal expenditures under any notion of appropriations. It's not about impounding funds. Here it's about funds that are not legitimately appropriated or legitimately used in the first place. A president clearly is not obligated to continue to fund fraud, waste, and abuse. A president is clearly not obligated to continue to fund, through the appropriation process, the political and cultural agenda, the ideological agenda of a single party, the Democrat Party. You see, part of the problem is our guys aren't making the right arguments when it comes to appropriations. Which spending bills authorized fraud, waste, and abuse? Those are illegitimate appropriations. President's not a mannequin who just sits there and watches everything go by within his own branch of government. So which spending bills authorized fraud, waste, and abuse? None of them? Okay, great. Then what's the problem? All of them? Okay, then it's an illegitimate appropriation. Congress's ability to appropriate actually has some constitutional limitations. Not a lot, but some, and they're significant. Which spending bills authorize tens of billions of dollars, if not more, for partisan political, cultural, and ideological causes, groups, and projects? That's not legitimate either. That's not legitimate either. And certainly the president can make that case. Now, if an executive department or agency, listen to me, if an executive department or agency has discretion on how to spend appropriated funds, because let's be honest, Congress is very sloppy. So sometimes they'll pass these big bills with big budgets, and they'll just throw it into, say, USAID or one of these other government entities. If an executive department or agency has discretion on how to spend those appropriations, then clearly the constitutional and elected chief executive of the executive branch who oversees these agencies and these departments can do the same thing. How can it be that a GS-15 in some backwater part of an agency can say, you know what, I'm going to issue a grant to this radical left-wing blah, blah, blah group. But the President of the United States, who's in the Constitution, who's elected, for whom this individual has ultimate reporting authority to, how can it be that the president can't make those decisions, or how can it be that he can't alter those decisions? It can't be. It's not possible. Here's the truth. Congress has delegated lawmaking to the bureaucracy that it created. It has delegated many spending priorities and decisions to the same bureaucracy. And I would argue that most of this, by the way, violated the whole notion of representative government and separation of powers. Most of it violates the notion of separation of powers, since the legislating and appropriating by this non-constitutional fourth branch of government is established within the executive branch. The bureaucracy doesn't sit in the legislature or the courts. It's not independent. It's housed within the executive branch and under the President of the United States. So you can see how unconstitutional this entire project is. It violates the core of separation of powers. But putting that aside just for now, here's the kicker. We're told that the only person in the executive branch, if you listen to the arguments that are being made, now I'm telling you things are going to be regurgitated as soon as the next legal analyst or political operative can get to a microphone, but stick with me, because I've developed these arguments. We are told that the only person in the executive branch had 2.5 million bureaucrats who cannot participate substantively in this process is the President of the United States. Bureaucrats, single bureaucrats, committees of bureaucrats, whole offices of bureaucrats can make these decisions, but the President of the United States cannot. Now that's preposterous. Oh, there's more. He cannot make those decisions if his decisions will in any way counter out of control spending. That is, if in any way his decisions are intended to limit the spending or to prevent the spending for these fraud, abuse, waste, or political and culturally driven decisions, he's not permitted to do it, they said. He's the one person who's elected nationwide in every state. The only one we have, him and the vice president. Not senators, not congressmen, bureaucrats aren't elected at all. He's the only one who's not permitted. The only person in the entire mass of government who's elected by all the people, and they tell us he can't do it. Except if he wants to increase spending, wants to give the bureaucracy more money, wants to advance a radical agenda, say student loan forgiveness or belly dancing in Botswana, then it's okay. So only one way may a president involve him or herself in the process. If they're going to spend more money, whether there's fraud, abuse, it doesn't matter. Sure, we expect that, right? Or to advance the radical left ideology in politics and culture and the economy and what have you. Then it's okay, because Biden did all those things. It only goes in one direction. You must spend, you must create debt, you must fund corruption, waste, and abuse, you must support the left's agenda, the ruling class agenda, the Democrat Party's agenda. Then it's okay. And then we're told the icing on the corruption ruling class cake. It's compelled by the Constitution. That this entire farce, this entire sham is compelled by the Constitution, which authorizes none of it. And we are told this by the very people who have told us that our Constitution is too old and written by men who were too white. We're told this by people who have looked for ways to usurp this Constitution, to rewrite this Constitution without amendments, to gut the Constitution, who are waving around the Constitution in defense of something the Constitution does not even authorize. The Daily Caller, Robert Shamad, Biden-Harris administration, this goes back to September 2024, on track to oversee massive $1 trillion in improper payments. Are any Democrats upset about this? Not in the least. Media? No, not at all. It's okay. It's good. The Biden administration will have made over $1 trillion in improper payments from the time Biden leaves office. That's in 4 years, according to a report released by the watchdog group Open the Books. According to some of these federal left-wing judges, close the books because they've created their own legal system. As Bastiat warned, these people, the ruling class, has created its own legal system. An improper payment is a disbursement made by the government to the wrong person in the wrong amount or for the wrong reason, according to federal guidelines. The Biden-Harris administration between 2021 and 2023, that's a 3-year period, oversaw over $800 billion in such payments after adjusting for inflation, according to the report. Donald Trump's taking more heat for trying to expose the fraud and the waste and the abuse and to fix it than those who created it. Have you noticed that? Donald Trump is basically the investigator, the cop, who's under attack for finding all this crooked and corrupt activity going on. Because that's what it is, America. It's crooked and corrupt at a level that nothing in the private sector could ever do. The amount of improper payments made by the Biden-Harris administration in 2024 won't be disclosed until after the election. We still don't know exactly. However, been made well aware of $200 billion in erroneous payments each year since it has been in power, according to Open the Books. The Biden-Harris administration will cross the $1 trillion threshold, barring something unprecedented, according to the watchdog. Quote, President Biden and his successors must take more action to address the proliferation of improper payments beyond mere rhetoric. Open the Book's Director of Communications, Christopher Neefus, told the Daily Caller News Foundation, the sheer magnitude of misspent taxpayer dollars is tough to comprehend, he says. Put into perspective, the most recent Pentagon funding bill cost $883 billion. That means the Biden administration will have misspent more than it takes to fund our national defense. Hello? Hello? Incredible. Let's see here. The Biden administration's improper spending works out to be roughly $7,500 incorrectly spent each second. Each second. According to the Open Books calculations, in 2021, now that's 4 years ago, 7.16% of federal disbursements were made improperly, a figure that fell to 5.4% in 2023. Well, yip-de-doo, but the amount of money spent in 2023 compared to 2021 is astronomically higher. Because of, the Inflation Reduction Act, which caused inflation. Improper payments report provided by the federal government are likely underestimates, as the Government Accounting Office points out that Congress hasn't given all federal programs the authority. Listen to this. Congress has not given all federal programs the authority to estimate erroneous payments, and because they're probably fraud schemes that go undetected by federal authorities. Wow, they really don't want it looked at, do they? No, they don't. The plurality of the Biden-Harris administration's erroneous disbursements in 2023 came from the Medicare and Medicare systems, which doled out $101 billion in improper payments that year. Now we know Social Security is $50 to $100 billion. And it goes on. What do you think of that, America? What do you think of that? I remember reading on the air here in the past years GAO reports, Government Accountability Office, of how the federal government, through fraud, waste, and abuse, has misspent or lost $250 billion a year. $250 billion a year. Now we have a president who wants to do something about it, but the people who've been in Washington, this ruling class, wants nothing done about it. Let me be very clear. Let's be crystal clear about this, and let's spread the word from sea to shining sea. The Democrat Party supports every one of these expenditures, all of them. The Democrat Party not only doesn't want to cut any, it wants to increase the spending. The Democrat Party is okay with $100 billion being stolen out of the Social Security system and another $100 billion being stolen out of Medicare and Medicaid. They're okay with that. Just as they were not only okay with, but were the perpetrators of the open border policies that have caused so much havoc in this country in so many ways. Let's be clear about this. It's Democrats who are going to federal judges, to mostly Democrat federal judges, appointed by Democrats, not exclusively, mostly, to try and get everything blocked that they possibly can. It's Democrat Party supporting public sector unions that are bringing several of these lawsuits. So the whole Democrat project, the Democrat machinery of government, the Praetorian Guard of corruption, graft, rip-offs, deceit, plunder. The Praetorian Guard is the Democrat Party, and they're using all their instrumentalities. It's like Israel's surrounded, We're surrounded by the Democrat Party. They're using all of their non-elected elements, the public sector unions, the bureaucrats themselves, the unelected federal judges, everything they can. They've created their own legal system now with these radical left-wing Democrat and Trump-hating judges, as Bastiat warned. And they glorify the supposed morality of what they're doing because they've changed morality to accommodate what they're doing. Our friend Glenn Reynolds, he's a professor, law school at Tennessee, really good guy, libertarian, runs a great site, writes in the New York Post. Democrats have their panties in a wad over the work that Elon Musk and Doge are doing to control government spending, but despite all the hoopla, what's actually going on is straightforward stuff that most people probably but wrongly assumed the government was doing all along. Musk wrote on next Saturday that Doge and the Treasury Department have agreed to take the following steps, and he goes into them. All outgoing payments must have a categorization code in order to be paid. That seems rational. I mean, how do you make the payment otherwise? That's supposed to already happen, but Musk has found the code is often left blank. Making audits nearly impossible. That's the goal. All payments must have an exclamation attached, another procedure that has been routinely ignored, making it hard to determine what or who federal payments are actually for. So they don't know who the payments are going to because that's not coded in, or what they're actually for because that's not going in. And they want to look into it at Treasury, and you have this friggin' moronic activist Democrat federal judge that says, no, you can't do that. Every payment must be checked against an up-to-date do not pay list of known frauds and terrorist groups, deceased people and expenditures that do not match congressional appropriations. That seems rather rational, don't you think? No criminals, no dead people, and no terrorists. The above super obvious and necessary changes are being implemented by existing long-time career government employees, Musk noted. It's ridiculous these roles didn't already exist. Yes, it is. Reynolds goes on. Musk went on to express disbelief that more than $100 billion worth of entitlements every year are going to individuals with no Social Security number, not even a temporary ID number. He says, when I asked if anyone at Treasury had a rough guess for what percentage of the number is unequivocal and obvious fraud, the consensus in the room was about $50 billion a year, maybe $1 billion a week, maybe $100 billion. Yeah, here and there. It's really quite incredible. Now, the Democrat Party is all for this. You need to understand, they're not only the party against the middle class, against people. The Democrat Party, and we will sanctify this right here, we'll put the marker down, is the party of waste, fraud, and abuse. That's why they're in the streets. That's why they're saying what they're saying. The Democrat Party, it's official. They're the party of fraud. Not just frauds, which they are, but the party of fraud. They think that money should be taken from you, stolen from you, fraudulently used. It's okay. You know, they wrapped. I saw one leftist on I think it was the 5, but on Fox, forget his name. And they'll mention like the 3 great things USAID has ever funded. Oh yeah, medical this, medical that, in order to avoid the tens of billions of dollars in unbelievably outrageous spending. So it's good enough, you see. So if a doctor saves 3 lives, but kills 10 people, that's okay. Just remember the 3 lives he saved. No, not so fast there. No. Slippery, these guys, aren't they? Not really. They're not even good at what they do. So here is really the first comprehensive effort to find out what the hell's going on, and it's under attack. It's like this Caitlin Collins with that constipated look on her face with the single brow that she obviously spends a lot of time plucking, Mr. Producer. Many legal experts say that we're nearing a constitutional crisis. Yes, many legal experts that we consult and bring on this program, liberal Democrats, they agree with me. And then they bring on this guy, Chris Murphy. It's not fair to call Chris Murphy Caucasian. I think he needs to be called transparent. Don't you, Mr. Producer? We need to have a whole new category. He's a transparent American, and I don't mean a transparent politician. I mean physically he's transparent. You know, as a kid, we used to have aquariums, these fish tanks, and you could see these fish where you could actually see through them. You could see their bones. You ever have those, Mr. Producer, these little ones? That's him. You can actually see into his skull. And what do you see in his skull? What do you see? Cotton candy. That's it. There's nothing there. Christopher Murphy, regular guest on the Sunday shows and any other show he can get on.
Mark Levin.
We're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
Ladies and gentlemen, massive corruption, massive fraud, massive redistribution of your wealth and our debt to corrupt radical left-wing organizations and causes here and overseas. You've got flat-out fraud taking place. Tens of billions of dollars in Social Security that is diminishing the availability of funds that seniors who've paid into it and soon to be seniors who will be coming into that program. I can't think of a single justification for any of this. Not one. Yet apparently it's the official position of the Democrat Party to use their state attorneys general to bring lawsuits to stop the Trump administration, to stop Elon Musk, to stop all these folks who are volunteering time, patriotic citizens, from auditing, from investigating, from gathering information, and then do something about it. There's now a mega lawsuit that's been brought by these Democrat attorneys general. They're all working in concert. They're colluding. They're conspiring. Challenging Elon Musk's appointment as unconstitutional. Challenging their access to information as unconstitutional. They're trying to drive a stake through the efforts to uncover all this fraud, waste, and abuse. That, ladies and gentlemen, amounts to hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. It is now clear that the Democrat Party stands for and would not only continue but expand massive amounts of fraud in our government. So you have to assume they're benefiting from it. Their causes are benefiting from it. Their organizations are benefiting from it. Can you tell me one Democrat leader who's put forward any proposals whatsoever to deal with this? None. Can you tell me what the Biden regime in 4 years did about this? You might say, what about Trump? That's interesting. Trump was busy fighting impeachments and criminal investigations and subpoenas and all the rest. So the Democrats, the same Democrats that did everything they could to kneecap him, to prevent him from pursuing his agenda, to prevent him from doing what he's doing now they complain that he wasn't doing it. We're not stupid. We know what's going on here. The Democrat Party wants the corruption, wants the fraud. Otherwise, what explains their conduct? They haven't said, let's work with the Republicans, let's work with Trump and figure out what's going on here. No, they're in courts. They're cherry-picking the radical left-wing judges in these radical left-wing cities. And then the irony of them claiming that these things are unconstitutional. I'm going to take lectures from these bastards about the Constitution when they've spent years telling us through critical race theory, through the 1619 Project, that the Constitution itself is poisonous, is cancerous, that was written by a bunch of slaveholders, that the Constitution reinforces white privilege. This is what they said. This is how they lectured us. These were the guests on cable and elsewhere. They've written books about it. Bestsellers. Promoted by corporate America. Promoted by corporate media. Academia. They set up organizations on college campuses, heavily funded to promote this propaganda. We were told the Constitution's too old, needs to be modernized. We were told that the Constitution enshrined privilege, white privilege. And now the Democrat Party waves around the Constitution, wraps itself in the Constitution as it now attacks an administration that's trying to actually abide by the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. They're not violating any laws. They're not violating any provisions of the Constitution. And yet this is the allegation. The Democrat Party is more than schizophrenic. It's Sybil. It's got 20 personalities. Whatever works. Whatever they need to say. What is it that drives the Democrat Party? Is it the best interest of you, the American people? Is it the best interest of the country as a whole? Is it really the Constitution? When they scheme and plot day in and day out on how to usurp it and skirt it? What have I told you the Democrat Party is about? Power. I've said it enough times that they're regurgitating on our favorite cable network and elsewhere. Power. That's what it's about. They see their power under attack. They don't care about corruption. It's their corruption. It's their organizations. It's their ideology that's being funded, not ours. So it doesn't matter if money's wasted. They don't view it as wasted at all. This guy, Elon Musk, we should be thanking God that we have people like this. Extraordinary. He's come along in a time in history when we need somebody like this and need the people he's bringing to bear on this massive Leviathan. Thank God that Donald Trump won the election while they tried to stop him in every way possible. He'd be serving time in a federal prison today if the Democrat Party had its way. If the media had its way, he'd be in federal prison today as I speak to you. And Kamala Harris would be the president of the United States. We have entities within our government that's actually funding terrorism. That's actually funding UNRWA, that backs and supports and funds terrorism. You haven't heard a single Democrat complain about it. Not one. They're not on TV banging the pots and pans. They're not doing it at CNN with this Caitlin Collins, Jake Tapper, Wolf Blitzer, and the rest of the buffoons. MSNBC, they're on the attack. You don't get any information if you're watching MSNBC. None of it. Over $36 trillion debt. If you include the stuff they put off budget, entitlements, it's over $300 trillion. They don't want to cut anything. They don't want to cut anything out of this morass, this edifice that they've created. Nothing. They had a hearing today. The Democrats, all they did was attack Elon Musk over and over again. Then attack Donald Trump. Then wave around the Constitution. The Democrat Party waving around the Constitution. Seriously, America? Certainly wasn't our Constitution. Probably the old Soviet Constitution. After years of telling us what a diabolical document it was, after years of supporting their militia pulling down monuments to the founders of this country and the framers of the Constitution. Now they're going to lecture you and me about the Constitution? Hell no, we're not going to put up with that. And the American people are onto this. You actually have a political party that is trying legally and through propaganda to stop the finding, the investigation, the auditing of corruption in our government, of which there is an unimaginable amount. Unimaginable. That are destroying things like Social Security and Medicare. They're not concerned that illegal aliens are on Social Security and Medicare. They're not concerned that people who are dead, apparently their families, are receiving Social Security checks. They're not concerned about any federal contractor that's ripping off the government. They're not concerned about redistributing wealth to foreign countries to push agendas that are anti-American or to push terrorist agendas. They don't care. They haven't said a word about it. All week, all last week. They've defended it. They're attacking the people who are exposing it. I just want you to know, America, this is what the modern Democrat Party stands for. Marxism, Islamism, graft, corruption, and fraud. Because it's their graft, it's their corruption, it's their fraud. They're the beneficiaries. Their causes and ideologues are the beneficiaries. Their front organizations are the beneficiaries. So what? There's $250 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse in every single annual federal budget. So what? $50 to $100 billion is lost in Social Security, including to illegal immigrants. So what? This is the position of the Democrat Party. We don't have a constitutional crisis in this country. The Democrat Party has a crisis. It stands for everything that is evil and bad. It stands for everything that is anti-American and anti-Constitution. This is who they are. They're out of the closet.